You're listening to Beyond the Surface with Faith Davis, a commitment to authenticity and the truths we inherently share. In this episode, we will be discussing religion's impact on me, our society, and the Black community. This topic is so raw for me right now. I actually just deleted all of my Christian music and have been so emotionally heavy. Christianity was probably the first real introduction to any sense of self I can remember. Faith, what does your name mean? My mother would ask, and on cue, without a doubt, I'd recite Hebrews 11. Faith is a substance things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. I knew it held weight because whenever I went anywhere, people heard my name and, there was always a reaction. Something about how faith is always needed and how it's such a beautiful name. I didn't understand the weight in a personal sense, but I'd been told to have faith the size of a mustard seed and I'd see mountains move. It's really just a very healing rhetoric tied to my name, and I tied myself to it very deeply. As someone who grew up in Kojic Church, which means something denominationally wise, but I still don't know. I grew up Kojic and then went to Baptist and then went to non-denominational. But all I knew was that everyone around me was performing in some way. From the moment I woke up on a Sunday morning, there was a lighter feeling. It was like everyone was trying to be on their best behavior. They definitely made sure to look their best. But there was a lingering darkness I couldn't put my finger on at that age. My grandmother and the pastor had something going on, I think. This all happened years ago, guys, like in the 2000s. But there was something going on there. I just didn't know what it was. And I remember asking my mom about it, and to my surprise, she just said she didn't know. I thought she would shut the conversation down entirely, but I think it was because she thought I was so little that I just wouldn't remember. But she did tell me something in that moment. I wonder if even she remembers. The pastor had kissed her in the mouth, and she told my grandmother. But when I asked her, what did my grandmother do to stand up for her? She said nothing. And in my opinion, that about sums up the whole church community. Obviously, I had no choice in being religious. Like most kids in the Black community, you are whatever your parents say you are. Honestly, in any person of color. Because, yeah, we know. All right. So I tried my hardest to listen and learn more about God and his son Jesus, who had died for my sins. By the way, being told that you were born sinful, it really fucks up your mind. Forever. And it needs to be studied. But guess what? It has been studied because I was on TikTok scrolling and this video found me and it was about religious trauma syndrome. It literally just jumped out at me and it felt, oh, this is perfect. So it's caused by religious indoctrination, abuse or manipulation, exposure to toxic teachings, unhealthy or controlling religious environment, or, breaking away from everything, like that lifestyle. And it was like those symptoms or how can I say this? That's what religious trauma is caused by, all the abuse and the things that go into it. Because I feel like I don't have to really get into what happens in the church. I feel like even people who aren't religious can see, we just recently had that case where it was like that church, it was a really big church and more or less they had been sued and they gave up all the money. They paid the people for abusing all of those little boys in that church. So it's like people know the type of stuff that's going on in the church. So I don't have to even really get into it. It's just the fact that this type of stuff is really messing with people's minds, religion in general, but specifically Christianity. And all I did was lean into learning more about God. And it was like my critical thinking skills was showing me how evil everything was. And I was like, okay, so it's creating people who aren't they're unempathetic. They believe that they're better than everyone. And they believe that their lives mean more in death than even in life. So it really just makes people very helpless. And I feel like every single Christian rhetoric is reminding them that they're helpless. And I feel like it doesn't help at all that capitalism and Christianity just decided to, like, merge together and do a little tango, because like they're just further like enslaving people, in my opinion. Actually, I'm not going to say that. I would just say that they're working together to further enslave people, because people who are Christian, and this is like one of the main things that other people can notice about Christians, is that they go against every principle to keep their lives afloat. Like they're going against things that they're quote unquote supposed to believe. And it's just like, I'm not sitting here saying that there's no gems in the Bible, because to be honest, there's a lot of pieces of text or literature that, you can pick out stuff that's good, take it with a grain of salt or whatever. But I just feel like religion and capitalism and poverty are the biggest reasons of why people are not, like, they're not able to even come to terms with how much they're suffering, because so much of it is silent suffering. And the amount of people who I believe are experiencing anxiety, depression, panic attacks, flashbacks, nightmares, guilt, and shame. Oh my gosh, the shame and the guilt, the feelings of worthlessness, all because they're believing in something that strips them of their power. And it's telling them to worship something that never shows up for anyone but people in power. And it's like, it's just painful to sit here and watch people who really do believe that they are doing the good, like a good thing. Because I'm telling you, when I was religious, when I was deeply in it, I swear to you, not everybody's coming from a malicious, like their intent is always malicious. Like they really think they're helping. They're just thinking from such a closed-minded perspective, because that's all they know. They're going based off of what they know. And it's like, something that I saw on social media that really resonated with me was how the biblical family is like one of the most toxic families out there. Like everybody, there's this one woman on TikTok. I think if you just search up someone reading the Bible, like reading it in chronological order, you'll see her. She's a white woman. She has dark brown hair, but she's kind of like synopsising all of like the chapters of the Bible. She's on Numbers right now, I think, but she's just showing people, and you can see very clearly how toxic the family dynamic is, just even off rip with like the incest and everything that's going on. And it's like, people are trying to emulate those dynamics. And I don't even think that people who are religious realize that it's that deep. Like, people are trying to emulate toxic behaviors that they don't realize are even toxic, because they're being showed a perspective to make them believe that it's not as bad as it is. You know what I mean? But I think people should check that TikTok creator out. I'm gonna find her actually while I sit here. But I came to the conclusion that, me personally, I'm going to be the manifestation of faith, because if faith is the substance of things, like if faith is the substance of things that hope for and the evidence of things not seen, then that's how I'm going to be. I'm going to be the substance of things hoped for, which is the courage to be your fucking self. And I will be that evidence in the world to show people that true love exists within yourself. And if anything is God, it's you. That people will have the ability to create something from nothing, communicate ideas and bring them to life, but they have allowed greed to blind them. And our society has succumbed to the abuse, and they even tolerate it. People are praying and not doing anything. They're leaving vengeance for God. They're not addressing issues. They're hiding and lying and isolating. And they're blaming everyone else for their self-lack. But it's because they don't realize that they put everything on something else. And it's like our society reinforces it, because any of that self-work you would do, any of that emotional, people call it shadow work, any of that deep diving that you were going to do, like, you're going to need to rest. You're going to need to cry. You're going to need to be around community. You're going to need to be around people as much as you're going to need to be by yourself, but you're going to need to be around that support system. And as much as everybody's working, as much as everybody is so fearful of not having food, of lacking, That's really what it is. Everybody's fear of not having. Mind you, there's so many of us. But people aren't thinking like that because they're so worried about everything else. And it's like, I'm not going to sit here and deny God at all or say that there isn't something there, or that, because truly I believe that probably every religion probably has something right. You know, some bit of something that we could take. But it's like, all I know is that I don't want to be a part of a religious family that doesn't truly love people or embrace change or new knowledge. And I feel like people have forgotten their divinity. They will always laugh at the person who's saying like, oh, we're on a floating rock. But it's like, newsflash, we are. And we don't know much about anything. Like, when did saying I don't know become the worst thing ever? Like, I know that everyone wants an answer to everything, but we don't know. And anytime someone may try to figure it out, y'all say it's laughable, it's a joke, there's only one God, he's this, he's that. But you're still sitting impoverished, aren't you still suffering? And it's like, the rhetoric to keep yourself binded is so strong. And I just feel like everyone is so disconnected from themselves. And it has been a painful experience, personally, to let all this stuff go, especially because I believe that it was fueling me forward in a good way. But I recognize so quickly that capitalism and Christianity impose an individuality that aims for a piece of pie in this system. Like, it just is like, okay, get your little piece and then shut up. It's like, okay, once you're good, you're good. Don't care about nobody else, doesn't matter. But I came to realize I didn't care about the slice of pie. And I haven't found any personal fulfillment in material items or just being able to say I made it while everyone else suffers. I think it's so selfish, and capitalism praises it while Christianity says, wait on God for your turn. And I recognize the reality. Most people don't get a turn. They work themselves to death. And I want more for humanity, for my people. Yes, because the Black community, like, it's its own section, but it's also, you know, we're all humans and we're reflecting off of each other. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much intersectionality going on, but it's like, I just feel like humanity as a whole is sick and we need rehabilitation. And if we don't give ourselves that, the planet is going to do it, because it's just going to start, like, as things continue to get worse with global warming or climate change, whatever you want to call it, like, people are going to continue to suffer. And it's going to be a lot of us, the people who are poor, the people without money. So it's like, we are the ones that need to stand up. We are the people who are indoctrinated. But I did find that creator. Her name is Zoe. It's called Zoe's Bible Study, at No Quid Pro Quo, on TikTok. And you guys can, like, if you wanted to, just hear how she's going through the Bible in chronological order, you know, from a critical thinking standpoint. But I want to thank you for listening, and I will see you on the next episode of Beyond the Surface.